Support for Consider This is provided by
There's a new place for senior care with daily laundry service. A place with a day spa. A place where seniors get the care they need in the comfort of home. Home Instead Senior Care.
from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
I think it's very disrespectful to our country. I think it's very, very disrespectful to our flag. I like Bob very much. He's my friend, but he gave me a Super Bowl ring a month ago, right? So he's a good friend of mine, and I want him to do what he wants to do, but we have a great country. We have great people representing our country, especially our soldiers, our first responders, and they should be treated with respect. And when you get on your knee and you don't respect the American flag or the anthem, that's not being treated with respect.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, freedom of speech. Joining us to talk more about it is Danielle Conrad. Danielle is an attorney and the executive director for ACLU of Nebraska. Thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation to join you today.
You bet. Hey, I want to start off by having you tell us how you define the United States Constitution.
Oh, well, sure. Well, I carry one with me every day, actually, because it's something that's so special and so dear to me and to our country. In 1787, our founders came together to establish a framework for self-government, and that's reflected in this beautiful Constitution. And then it helped to establish and breathe life into the individual civil rights and civil liberties that are detailed in our Bill of Rights, including the First Amendment. And so our Constitution is the bedrock of our democracy, and it is such a critical part of the debate that we're going to have today and about every debate that we have in this beautiful, strong, enduring constitutional democracy.
Thank you. You mentioned it, but how do you feel the First Amendment does play into all of this?
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's no accident that there's a reason that it's first, right? The First Amendment is absolutely critical when it comes to protecting individual rights and individual rights of association, individual rights of expression, a free press, free exercise of religion. Those were the top of mind considerations for our founders in coming together at that point in time to establish those very, very clear civil rights and civil liberties in the context of what was facts and circumstances were being jeopardized under colonial rule. And so these are the enduring values that have continued to make America a wonderful country and are so dear to each and every one of us. The right to express ourselves peacefully, the right to associate with those we want to associate with, the right to practice our religion, and the right to petition our government. Those are all key pieces of being an American, and they're enshrined in the First Amendment.
Yeah, of course, the First Amendment at the heart of so much
That's
of
right.
what ACLU of
Yes.
Nebraska does. And before we talk more specifically about that, Danielle, tell us what we need to know about the organization that maybe we haven't read anywhere or haven't heard.
Sure. Well, the ACLU is a proud civil rights organization. On the national level, we're preparing to celebrate our centennial, our 100-year anniversary in 2020. But a little bit closer to home here in Nebraska, we just celebrated our 50th anniversary in 2016. So we're one of Nebraska's longest standing civil rights organizations, and we stand up for the individual rights and liberties afforded to all Nebraskans in both the U.S. Constitution and the state Constitution. And so we carry out our objective and our mission through a system of integrated advocacy. And what that means is that we use litigation, we utilize the courts, we do public policy advocacy in the halls of power, and we do community education and community empowerment strategies to get out and inform people about their rights and empower them to exercise their rights.
Wow, you have quite a background, right? So I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about that and the journey that led you to become the executive director.
Sure.
So tell us, What's important to know about Danielle?
Oh, sure. Well, you know, I'm a lifelong Nebraskan. I hail from rural Seward County, and then I made my way to Lincoln, like a lot of other young people, to attend the University of Nebraska. So I'm a graduate of the University of Nebraska and the University of Nebraska College of Law. And when term limits came into effect in Nebraska, I decided there was an open seat in my legislative district in North Lincoln, and I really wanted to make a difference and pursue a career in public service. And so I put on my tennis shoes and went out and knocked on a lot of doors and talked to my neighbors about some of my ideas to try and make Nebraska a better place, and to learn more about their ideas about how we could work together to make Nebraska a better place. So I was able to live out a life dream and serve in the Nebraska unicameral legislature for 2 terms, and to represent the Fightin' 46th legislative district of North Lincoln. So when term limits came calling for me in 2014, I had to decide what was next in my professional journey. And some dear friends that I'd worked hand in glove with in the legislative arena stepped forward and said, you know, we have an opening at ACLU of Nebraska, and we think that you might be a good fit. And so I've been at the helm for a little over 3 years, and it's been a thrilling time to make a positive difference for civil rights and civil liberties. And it's really fun because I get to stay engaged in the legislative arena and work on issues that I care about, and then also dust off my law degree a little bit and assist with some of our litigation strategies. And one of my favorite things about being involved in public service is talking to my fellow Nebraskans and to getting them excited about civil rights, civil liberties, current events, and government and politics. So I get to continue that community education as part of my job too, which is really fun.
When you were back in the day knocking on doors and having those exchanges, I can't even imagine the stage that set for where you are today. Take us to some of those doorsteps, Danielle.
Sure.
I mean, what were some of the important issues, and I guess even better, what did you learn from that going into where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I cherish those conversations and that input, and that feedback from Nebraskans is always in my head and in my heart when I'm deciding either how to cast a vote in the legislature or how to pursue our mission at ACLU of Nebraska. And, you know, what that experience taught me is that there's more that binds us together as Nebraskans rather than what divides us. And the good news is, even though we have different points of view on different issues, we debate them openly, and we debate those fairly, and we come to consensus and conclusions that allow us to move forward together. And what was always top of mind in my district in North Lincoln was economic opportunity and educational opportunity. We had a lot of challenges with those issues in my community, and so I was always fighting for a strong public education, kindergarten through college, and fighting for workers' rights, health, and safety. And I really see my job at the ACLU of Nebraska as an extension of my public service, because I'm fighting for the civil rights and the future opportunities of all Nebraskans through our litigation and policy work.
Wow. Greatest challenge or climb that you encountered getting to where you are today?
Sure. Oh my gosh. Well, you know, no one does anything solely on their own, and I've been so thankful to have strong mentors and strong supporters and strong partners in my family close to home that have been with me each step along the way, and then that make up the team of the ACLU of Nebraska today. We have a 7-person staff, an 18-person board of directors, and dozens of cooperating attorneys and volunteers that help us to do our important work. So I've just been so delighted to meet the challenges when they do present themselves with that incredible group of support. And as you might imagine, when you work the waterfront on civil rights and civil liberties issues, taking up some of the most challenging issues, whether it's immigration, reproductive rights, free speech, or criminal justice, we're working on complex issues in a very difficult political landscape. And so there's always challenges when it comes to political pushback, when it comes to resources, but we're able to manage those challenges by working together and really focusing on staying principled and true to our mission in support of individual rights.
Danielle, what drives you?
Oh gosh.
Seriously, I mean, I'm listening to you,
Sure,
and you really do have one challenge one day after another. Some victories, obviously, too. But when you get up in the morning, what drives you to finish the day?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I I love Nebraska and I love this country, and I'm so fortunate to be an active citizen and an active participant in this democracy. And I know that our country is ever arching towards justice and closer to a more fair and more prosperous future for ourselves and for the future. And I really believe that we need strong civil rights and strong civil liberties protections to ensure that every Nebraskan has the opportunity to be their best selves, and that benefits us all. So when I face these challenges, when we're working through our work at ACLU of Nebraska, it's about making sure our world is more fair and more just today and for the next generation.
And when you talk about that work at ACLU of Nebraska, talk to us a little bit. I know you said 3 years, but there have to have been, and maybe you even heard of a few, of those most meaningful moments when the staff comes together in the office and says yes, or you're out traveling the state advocating for something for someone. What are 2 or 3 instances that come to mind for you, and even if it's just things that you heard about before you came on board?
Sure. You know, the ACLU of Nebraska has such a proud and rich history in this great state, and has been able to achieve a lot of victories in the courts and in the legislature and in our community organizing work. But just a few recent examples of our work that might be top of mind for your viewers and that are so important to our work and that make us so proud. A few years ago, shortly after I took over at the helm of the ACLU, we filed a historic litigation challenging the discrimination that was enshrined in our state's constitution and that prevented many Nebraskans from exercising their freedom to marry those that they loved. And we took that case to federal court. We won a historic victory challenging the DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act that was in our constitution, and helped to really pave the way for more Nebraskans to exercise their freedom to marry. And so standing up on behalf of those 7 beautiful families that fought for their rights and fought for their family was something that I'll always remember and always cherish, and made our state and our communities and our country stronger and more fair and more just. Just this year at the Nebraska Supreme Court, we were able to win a historic victory, striking down a discriminatory ban against LGBT Nebraskans in the foster care system. And so not only did this help to end discrimination against gay and lesbian Nebraskans, but it helped to open up more loving homes and more loving hearts to kids in need of safe foster homes. And so that was just a really special victory that was critical for our clients and critical for Nebraska's future. So those are a few examples of some of the highlights in our recent litigation. And when it comes to our work in the policy arena, you know, we've worked really hard to make important efforts to reform our criminal justice system that has grown so unwieldy. Our system of mass incarceration today ensnares so many Nebraskans that almost 1 in 10 Nebraska children will have a parent in the criminal justice system at some time. Nebraska kids will have a parent in the criminal justice system at some point, and that's a shocking statistic. And it comes with a huge price tag to our state budget and a huge price tag for individual human rights. And so we have scored historic victories working hand in glove with legislators across the political spectrum to reform some of our criminal justice policies, to right-size our sentences and to provide more meaningful alternatives for those who maybe have mental illness or a behavioral health issue instead of dealing with those in the criminal justice context. But we haven't gone far enough. And so recently we came together with a broad coalition of other Nebraskans and other critical experts across the country to challenge conditions of confinement in our state prisons and to try and draw down more support for things like basic health care and basic mental health care, and to stop the overuse of solitary confinement that happens in Nebraska and has dramatic impacts on people, particularly with mental illness. So that's a big part of our work. And then we're really at the forefront of fighting for equality and justice for our Nebraska neighbors that are immigrants and refugees, whether it's the most recent fight to try and get a permanent pathway for DACA youth, the beautiful dreamers that are in Nebraska, for standing up for their right to get driver's licenses or occupational licenses. So there's never a dull millisecond at the ACLU of Nebraska,
right.
But we feel so honored to be at the forefront of these critical issues and to be making a positive difference, particularly for groups and individuals that historically have been unrepresented or underrepresented in the halls of power, and whose rights are typically most at risk of being jeopardized.
Danielle, knowing that you are, and you have, run up against opposition.
Sure,
Maybe sometimes feel like you're running uphill against the wind. What have you found to be most successful in trying to clearly articulate a message, maybe not just to the opposition, but just to everyone as a whole, with kind of that thought of becoming united at the end of the day? What have you found in your professional and personal life that seems to make the most sense or has done the most good?
Well, you know, I think Nebraskans are really pragmatic people, really thoughtful people, and really warm and welcoming people as well. And it can get a little tense, and it can be challenging sometimes when you are working on these controversial issues, and it can ignite a lot of passion on both sides or all across the political spectrum. And what I always think is an important takeaway to help frame that debate in a constructive way is to remind folks that, you know, it's a good thing that we have a difference of opinion, and it's a good thing that we have a diversity of perspective. I mean, can you imagine a world where we all thought exactly the same thing? That would be, it's hard to imagine, and I think quite awful. But I think this diversity of opinion and perspective is critical and exciting and vibrant and important. And when we resolve our differences amongst those diversity of opinions and perspectives, you know, yelling and screaming rarely solves the problem, whether that's at your kitchen table, whether that's in your boardroom, or whether that's in the halls of power. But having authentic conversations grounded in data, grounded in real life personal stories, you know what, we can find the right result. And it's usually a common ground area, a common sense area that allows us to move forward or to move the ball forward just a little bit, again, closer to that ever-arching bend towards justice and fairness and the ideals that we all want to hold dear and to uphold. So I think that it doesn't sell a lot of newspapers and probably doesn't grab a lot of clicks on social media, but there's more that unites us than divides us, even today at the dawn of this new and unprecedented political era. So I'm hopeful that the strength of our institutions, the values of our democracy, the rights enshrined in our Constitution will carry us forward as they always have.
Carrying us forward in one of the latest challenges, conflicts, controversies, if you will, NFL, football players taking a knee. We're going to put some photographs up as you're talking with us about this. I don't know, Danielle, where do we start with this whole issue? Let's go back to the history, because I think if folks are just tuning into this issue and they don't understand, I think it's like so much else, where all of this came from. So if you could maybe walk us through that historically a little bit.
Sure. Well, you know, we love our football in Nebraska, right? Across the board. So this is front and center on Nebraskans' mind. We looked at this issue in Nebraska just last year when 3 college football players decided to take a knee during the anthem in protest of racial injustice that they were experiencing and that they saw in their communities. And now we're seeing this play out in the NFL. And I think that it's important to remember that, like you mentioned in the lead up, this isn't isolated. This is part of a broader context and a broader history. And, you know, part of our enduring American values is the fact that dissent is patriotic and that it is absolutely as American as apple pie to challenge the status quo and to speak truth to power and to do so through expressive and peaceful means. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we saw in Nebraska last year on the sidelines. That's what we're seeing play out in the NFL this year, and is, again, a long part of our nation's history. Many of your viewers will remember back during the 60s and in the Olympics where some athletes raised a fist during the national anthem. They'll remember the intersections of politics and expressive free speech from Jackie Robinson to Muhammad Ali to the NFL players of today. So this is part of a broad and rich tradition to speak truth to power and to stand up for not only what our country is today, but to push it to be even better tomorrow. And I think that we can all agree that we have some work to do when it comes to racial justice issues. And this is just those individuals' way of focusing the debate on how we can come together and make improvements moving forward.
So what are your thoughts in terms of when? We probably don't have a real good answer, but how? You know, so it's been, this issue has been sticking around for a while. How does it go away? And maybe it morphs and evolves into something else. But what do you see happening here?
Well, you know, there's no easy answers to address very complex issues like racism in America, right? These are issues that have been at the heart of the founding of our country and that extend through today and that our country continues to grapple with. But I can tell you this, the ACLU, we're equally committed to free speech as we are to racial justice and are proud to work with Nebraskans and Americans across the political spectrum that care about speech and that also care about racial justice. I don't think that those values align with any one particular party or any political ideology. I think that those are things that we all care about. Now, we may see them differently and we may have different solutions to those problems, but again, I think there's common ground in standing up for racial justice. And so what can we do locally? What can we do to make a positive difference? The first thing that we can do is kind of get a handle on the facts and see how systemic racism impacts our different institutions. Now, whether that's educational equity, whether that's in our criminal justice system, there's a host of different questions we should be asking and not be afraid to find the answers to. And I think that what Nebraskans will find is that there are significant disparities that exist in our educational systems, that do exist in our criminal justice system. And, you know, it's no accident that, you know, about 10% of Nebraskans come from communities of color, but there's significant overrepresentation at every level of our criminal justice system for people of color, where those that are incarcerated make up over half. And that's more than about individual acts. That's about a systemic and institutional problem. So what can we do? We can come together and do better training on implicit bias. We can stop for-profit policing, and we can ensure that each stakeholder in the criminal justice system is thoughtful about these racial justice impacts in their charging decisions, in their sentencing decisions, and in every decision that goes along the way. Because when we talk about mass incarceration, it's about criminal justice and it's also about racial justice. The same holds true in our discussions about immigration policy. Those are racial justice issues too that we have to be ready to talk about. And whether it's at those kitchen tables or in the boardrooms or in the halls of power, we have to be able to ask ourselves the hard questions, and we have to come together to find solutions and ensure funding is equitable for all communities, and that we have an even playing field moving forward. And how can we tear down discrimination? By talking about it, by recognizing it, and by looking at solutions that have worked in other places and applying them in Nebraska.
In just a few minutes that we have remaining, I want you to talk just very briefly about the president's role. And, you know, obviously has the platform, regardless of the topic, right? Has the platform. So at what point here, especially in the NFL issue, for example, is he crossing a line, or will he get called out? Do you see what I'm saying? Just talk briefly about that.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that whoever holds the reins of power and the keys to the presidency has an extraordinary power to shape the debate in this country. And we are proud at the ACLU to always speak truth to power, regardless of who that is, and regardless of party, and regardless of personality, and to stand up for the individual rights and civil liberties guaranteed in the Constitution. But I think it's important to note when the president makes these most recent comments about free speech and racial justice and how that plays out in these NFL protests, it's got to be part of that broader narrative again. When we've seen the president make very disturbing and unfortunate statements attempting to insert moral equivalency into the white supremacy actions in Charlottesville or beyond, it's again part of that broader context that I think really troubles so many Americans. And we absolutely respect the right of the president to hold his personal points of view and to share those however he sees fit. But we do call upon the president to be thoughtful in how he communicates and to do more to unite us rather than to divide us as a country. And again, let's figure out ways that we can address racial injustice, that we can respect peaceful speech, and that we can move forward. So I think that it's in many ways uncharted territory that we have in the current political climate. But the good news is we have the values and the institutions and people of goodwill who can come together and I think drown out the white noise and find a pragmatic path forward.
Well said. Okay, I want to conclude by going to websites, which we'll do from time to time. We're going to put up a couple for our viewers, and I know one of them is yours, so if you want to go ahead and share your website with us.
Sure. Well, we definitely encourage people to learn more and to visit acluofnebraska.org or follow us on social media. Great way to keep up on breaking news, know your rights, tips and tricks, and to engage with policymakers at key points in the debate.
Perfect. Daniel, thank you so much for
so
being
much.
here.
It's
and
a
to
real
our
joy.
students who are working behind the scenes so
They're
hard,
so
to our viewers for
dynamite.
watching. So, as we close, a trip to Mahoney State Park as seen through the lens of Nolan Chalupka, a sophomore here at UNO. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at netnebraska.org/Consider This. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu. Support for Consider This is provided by
There's a new place for senior care, a place with flexible meal plans and 24-hour room service. A place where seniors get the care they need in the comfort of home. Home Instead Senior Care.